Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for another episode in the stories from the Stradling Collection. In this episode, I am joined with Janet Brinnand, who knew Ken very dearly, and I was very lucky to interview her and ask her about all of the stories and anecdotes that she had with Ken. It was amazing to talk to her. She knew so much about Ken, right from the 1980s when they were touring, up until 2020. So it was great to meet her, and it was lovely to see how much the collection has progressed since its establishment. So that was an amazing chat, and I hope you enjoy it.
I've been trying to work out when I exactly met him. I met him because I was living in Bath. We'd moved from Cornwall to Bath. I was living in Bath, and I met an architect who had been working on restoring historic buildings. And through this particular architect, Niall Phillips, I think I must have met him in about 1984-5.
Oh wow.
But we moved to Bristol, and I started to work on a building that Niall Phillips was restoring to learn how to do fundraising. And I moved to Bristol in 1986, and I think it was round about that time that the trust that I was working with Niall Phillips, called the Vivat Trust. And the Vivat Trust was unique because it restored historic buildings that they didn't have to own. They had a kind of leasehold on, but they were buildings that were entailed within the big estates mainly.
Mm-hmm.
And we restored that. So they were all very small, quirky buildings, and they were restored and basically let out as holiday lets. Whilst I was there, I progressed from being this kind of temporary to becoming the director of this. I mean, I was the only thing, so I did everything. You know, I did the grant applications. I went to see the buildings with the two architects and all the rest of it. And Ken became, during that period, a director and treasurer of the Vivat Trust. Oh. And my office was in Ken's office at the Bristol Guild.
Oh, okay.
So that is where I started. So it wasn't the Ken Stradling Collection that started me off. It was Ken himself. And I think we had such fun, Ken and I, because Ken was in charge of, he was the treasurer, but he was also in charge of buying all the furniture and choosing the curtains and everything to do with, once we'd restored the buildings, actually kitting out these buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So Ken and I and we worked all over the country. So the first building that I did, and I think this must have been about that time in 1986, would be the at Eighton-on-Severn in Shropshire, which was a little Tudor banqueting house, which is literally a one-story house. So there's that. But he became very much more involved after that. And Ken and I travelled the country in a van.
Oh, really?
Yes, because we were looking for furniture, ephemera, objects, and we always tried to buy in the area where the building was located.
Oh, okay.
So we did a part of an Elizabethan tower just outside Hathersage, a building called North Lees, which was very big. And it was originally used as a sort of a hostel for travellers and things like that. So we had to do a lot of revamping on it and restoration. It was very exciting. Um, and um, and Ken was always involved. We were doing the final touches. It was terrifying, actually, because we were doing the final touches. I was making curtains, and his friend June Lancaster, a great lifelong friend, was scrubbing all the stairs, including the cellars. And they were still putting the leaded light windows in to the building. So it was very cold and it was snowing. And Ken was off researching where would be a good place to go for dinner that evening after we'd finished.
I've heard he loves dinner. I've heard he loves meals. That's the consensus there.
So we did that, and we had such fun in doing that building. I mean, it was a great moment in doing that building. I remember we were invited out. The pair of us were invited out. Oh, and we always used to stay. Did anybody told you about the Wolsey Lodges that he was keen on?
No.
There is a holiday thing called Wolsey Lodges. It's worthwhile looking up. And it's people who, that Wolsey, Cardinal Wolsey was a bon viveur. And Ken was definitely a bon viveur. Did everything he could to be that. And so it was places that were very unusual places. And up in Derbyshire, which is where this was, we stayed over at a vet and his wife, and they were wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and it was fantastic. And so we turned up late. We were having lunch because we'd been working so hard. It was snowing, it was difficult. We turned up late. They'd held dinner for us, which was lovely. We were the only guests, and we started dinner in front of the fire with a couple of Labradors lying down with sherry. Ken was in his element. He loved it.
I feel like that I would be in my element if I was in that. That sounds so nice. And how did you guys work so well together as a duo? You know, you guys were on all of these trips around the country.
I think I laughed so much with Ken. We laughed all the time. It was just wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. He was a hopeless treasurer. I mean, he forgot to pay people because all these properties had people who were looking after them. I couldn't look after them. So, seeing people in and out, cleaning, changing the bed sheets, managing the properties and all the rest of it. He always forgot to pay them. I was always running around after him saying, you've got to pay this, or putting his checkbook down in front of him and saying, pay that. But he was joyful. He was utterly joyful and such a zest for life.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to look at a building we were on the train this time because we did it in a day. So we went up to Carlisle, I think it was. We were looking at a building up there. And it had been a busy day, a hard day, and a long journey out from Bristol up to Carlisle on the train. And getting the train back, we were sitting at the station, we're going, and Ken's going, I've looked it up. They do dinner on the train. So there it was, 8:00, and the train arrived, and we got on the train, making sure that we got on the dining car, and we walked in full of anticipation, and the guard said, I'm sorry, we just closed the kitchens. Oh. And the look of despair on both of our faces. And he said, never mind, I can probably find something for you. And we sat down, and all by ourselves with the guard holding forth with Ken, because Ken always found people to talk to. So that was the essence of Ken.
Yeah. What was his thought process, or how did you know what his thought process was when he was collecting things?
He had a great sense of design. Ken always used to say to me, I understand quality. And I got that from my mother. Because his mother have you heard this one?
I think I've heard a lot about his mother, and she's been a very big influence, yeah. Very,
very big influence. And his mother took him to auctions all the time. And he said, and I learned all about quality and why things just look right. He said, and I find it very hard to explain what it is that is right about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and some of the things that, I mean, he was really absolutely taken with those sodding little sort of hedgehog things that have got spiny bits sticking out of them. You see them all over the place. He loved them. He had dozens of them. You know, you could never fail if you bought Ken a hedgehog from somewhere else. So I think that probably is where we started. And I became, and then I took a job in London. And so I was travelling up and down to London, and I was pretty tired actually. And my youngest lad wasn't at all well. And one day, but I was kept in touch with Ken, because once are a friend of Ken's, you remain a friend of Ken's. Ken was brilliant at keeping in touch with people. I mean, his address book was absolutely jammed with people that he'd known over his entire life. And he would always call, he would phone. And he could see that I was stressed and tired and all the rest of it. And he said to me once, while I was doing this job, he said, do you like dancing? I said, what sort of dancing? So he said, ballroom dancing. And I said, yeah, I do like ballroom. I don't know much about it. Anyway, he signed it up. And once a week, I arranged to get back from London, so catch an earlier train. And I'd go and pick him up, and we'd go to his old dancing teacher.
Oh, wow.
Irene Toft, who just took Ken and myself to teach us ballroom dancing.
I didn't know he was a dancer. Did he like dancing?
He was a ballroom dancer, yeah. He loved dancing, but his wife didn't like dancing. So he didn't do it after that. But it had remained with him, this. And so he and I was not allowed to tell anybody. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to tell anybody what we were doing.
Oh, really?
It was a secret, yeah.
Oh, okay. And, you know, with his, you know, personality as well, how would you say your relationship with Ken was kind of different to other people's? How was it kind of unique?
I don't know. It was a very rounded relationship, often in friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Friendships, the friends that you have, that you share everything with. So your joyful moments, your sad moments, your fearful moments, your angry moments, they are, your friendships are usually channeled in one direction. The friends that you can share anything with are very rare.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that's how I felt about them. I mean, but you know, don't get me wrong, I was one of many ladies, one of the potters that we used to go and see, said to me one day, oh, so you're one of the ladies that takes Ken out, are you? So he had a whole bouquet of ladies. I mean, the deal was, you know, he would, like, I took him on a trip round down to Cornwall one week, and basically he wanted to stop off at a number of potteries. So we did this trip, and I was driving in my car, but the deal was that he paid for the accommodation, and we ate very well.
Because he chose good food spots. He was really good with food. I've heard so much about him and his restaurants. He really did love a good restaurant. And we found a recording as well. He had a cassette tape recording of a BBC Radio 4 show talking about a Michelin star restaurant. It's like he literally loved restaurants and everything about it.
Yes, he did. He loved restaurants. He loved good food. He loved everything that went with good food, the vibe, the conversation, the laughter, you know what I mean, the warmth, the bonhomie.
So after you guys kind of toured around the country, what happened after with that? You know.
Well, I left because I went to do the I went to do another job in London connected with building conservation. And the person who took over from me was her husband, Christopher Lloyd. So it was Frances Lloyd. She was a woman to be reckoned with. She was amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, she achieved with Vivat Trust. I couldn't have even begun to achieve what she achieved, but she had connections. Her husband was the keeper of the Queen's Pictures, Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, okay.
And Christopher and they lived in St James's Palace.
Oh, wow.
And I think he really enjoyed that period of time. Well, Frances Lloyd is probably, she was very close to Ken. But then it became a much more professional organisation. I mean, it was a bit of a kitchen table type organisation when I was there. But it became a much more professional organisation. So Frances Lloyd was, I think, probably very important to him.
And so you kind of moved on from building conservation, and then when did you kind of first understand or, first visit the Ken Stradling Collection I think it was established in 2006, I think?
He had a group of friends around him. You're probably speaking to Peter Metcalf. So that group of people that were the original trustees, and Ken was the chair.
Mm-hmm.
And when I retired in 2002, I retired. He put me forward to be a trustee of the SS Great Britain, because he was a trustee of the SS Great Britain. So we were both trustees of the SS Great Britain together.
Oh, okay.
When he became increasingly not well, really, and he asked me to step up as chair of the Stradling Collection.
Oh, right.
So I was chair of the Stradling Collection. I forgot when that started. That was so difficult to do that job. When I took on as chair, the formality of the collection was very informal. We had the great, beautiful desk table downstairs that was covered in coffee marks, because he didn't kind of respect, he used furniture. And he always had ceramics on open shelves, because he believed you can't really appreciate something unless you can handle it. And furniture, he expected to be used.
Mm-hmm.
And use actually leads to certain amounts of damage, and you just go with it, is his view. So it was very difficult, but the collection was not catalogued at all. We didn't know what we had and where it was in any formal kind of way. And the trust did not own that little 3-story building. I think it was kind of given the ground floor, which was the studio, the gallery.
Yeah.
But it was there's no formality in it, I don't think. I don't know how they came to use the cellar, but the cellar was where most of the stuff was stored.
Yeah.
And the floors above, actually, they had the use of them from the Bristol Guild. Everything was owned by the Bristol Guild.
Okay.
And it became clear to me when I became chair that had to change.
Yeah.
They owe a lot to Tanya, who actually did a fantastic job cataloguing. The cellar was in the most horrendous state. And that was the period when Ken sold part of the guild, the back of the guild, and gave a big grant, I think it was about £50,000, to the Stradling Trust and Stradling Collection. And with that, and I was chair then, and with that money, we cleared everything out of the cellar, because the whole cellar was absolutely wringing wet.
Wow.
And we had the whole cellar tanked.
Oh, okay. Like to free up space and everything, there was just too much.
Well, we couldn't get, it wasn't the free up space, actually, so that you could use it.
Yeah.
Because it was a shocking place to put stuff, because it was running with water.
Oh.
It was terrible.
No.
So we had it completely tanked, and this was the money that went towards, really did all this, completely tanked. And the little room that's off it, that little study room, was done up. And then we put everything back. And Tanya actually really began then, because Chris got another job, he moved on, and in between all that, we got Tanya, and Tanya clearly had the kind of mind that was up for that, and she did a superb job.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I realised I finally got hold of the paperwork for how much of that little 3-story building we owned, and we didn't own anything. Yeah, and it would have all been part of it would have gone with the guild.
Oh.
And he agreed, and it was signed over as it is now to the trust.
Okay, right. So it took a lot of process for it to become to what it is now, with Tanya now curating a bit more kind of organised and everything.
It's extremely organised. I mean, yeah. I have to say that about Tanya. I mean, Tanya is another one who recognises quality.
Yeah.
And she is very, very nice. And she was good to work with, actually. So it did. Then I think probably that is the major contribution that I made to the Ken Stradling collection. It sorted out.
That's good. That's the most important part, to be honest, because then it becomes a running collection that people can visit and people can do.
Well, otherwise it would have it would have gone down, because we would have had nowhere to put the collection.
Yeah.
Nowhere for the collection to be. Having said that, I think Ken always saw the collection becoming part of the university. He didn't want it to go to the local authority and the museum. Because a lot of stuff is stored in the basement there and never sees the light of day. But he did think that the university would take care of it.
What do you think Ken taught you? What did Ken teach you about, through your touring around the country, or maybe later on in life? What did he teach you?
He taught me how to take the very best of every single day as it came along. When he was confined to bed, he couldn't walk. And so he had these carers in. And one day I was visiting him. He said, "Do you know what I'd like?" So I said, "No, what would you like?" And he said, "I would like you to get me an atlas, a big atlas, because these girls that come in, they come from all over the world, and I'd like to see where they come from." And that was Ken.
He's very curious about who and what's going on around him as well, even until the end. And for the people who are listening now, kind of how do you want Ken to be remembered by visitors, people who are doing tours and workshops, when Tanya's doing tours and telling people about Ken, and also through this podcast when people are talking about Ken, how do you personally want people to keep on remembering him as the collection kind of goes on without him?
I think what Ken, and I think I've already alluded to this, Ken didn't want the objects in the collection. He loved them because they represented somebody's endeavour, that they were beautifully shaped, formed, cast, created, whatever they were. And it didn't just the collection of the ceramics and that, it was everything. That everything that he did, he taught other people around him how to enjoy things. He gave out a lot.
Yeah.
He was only a collector because he loved beautiful things.
And he had a vision for it very clearly.
He did, but I mean, he wanted it to survive. But I don't think he thought of it surviving in a bubble. He would much rather see people out there being able to handle these lovely things and be part of it.
And I think that's what the most important part is of this podcast, and of the tours and workshops that we have as well within the collection, is that people can go and visit it and look at it in great detail. We can actually kind of see it and like touch it and everything. So that's what's so important about it. Thank you so much, Janet, for spending your time here and talking to me.
The Stradling Collection hosts a combination of workshops, tours and exhibitions showcasing Ken's collection. We are a small charity based in Bristol, open to the public and accepting of donations and sponsorships. More details can be found on our website included in the episode description. Thanks for listening.